Hey everybody, I'm Agree,
I'm Harrison.
and this is Bottom Line Design. Today we've got on the show Yana Welinder, who is the co-founder and CEO of Kraftful, a product feedback product. So if you want to go ahead and tell us kind of a little bit about Kraftful, what it does, how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Kraftful is a co-pilot for product teams. We now help almost 50,000 product teams make sense of all their feedback from various sources like support tickets, app reviews, call transcripts, survey data. And then we also have our own kind of survey process and AI-powered user interviews, and then we collect all of that data and help you get really clear lists of feature requests and complaints that you can work on and incorporate into Jira or Linear or wherever else you do your product work. So it's sort of a takes every piece of the puzzle and makes it easier. And before Kraftful, I was a PM at various tech companies, most recently head of product at IFT. And so really, this is kind of the problem that I've seen in all of my product work prior to Kraftful. And so it's made it very obvious for me to think about like how do we use AI in the most helpful way for product teams. And that's what we arrived with. Really, really excited to be
So
here and
okay,
chat
we
about
we
this
know
thing.
what you were doing. We now know what you were doing before Kraftful. What were your customers doing before Kraftful? How would they
Mm.
solve this problem?
Yeah, great question. People always ask me like, what are you replacing? And I think that the most common thing that we're replacing is a spreadsheet. So folks just sitting there reading through all of their user feedback and putting it in a spreadsheet and then trying to organize it. For me, at IFT, like I would sit on Friday nights with a glass of wine and read our App Store reviews. That's what I'm giving my past self back my Friday nights, basically, right? But there are but there are some tools that are
Wait,
sort of
you
like,
guys
well,
don't like to
hey,
spend your Friday nights doing that?
I mean, look,
I
if you founded the company, it's a different story, but I get what you're saying, you know?
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I'd love to hear from users, but I also like to do other things on Friday nights.
Yeah, I think that one of the best categories of products is just something that replaces a spreadsheet, right, for a specific use case. And so what you were doing before Craftful existed, and I imagine other PMs were doing as well, other product people, was they were just harvesting large, ungodly sums of user feedback in spreadsheets, essentially.
I think that's right. I think that's one way to talk about it. Another way to talk about it, which is sort of like the dirty secret of the product world, is that for most part, people were also ignoring a whole lot of user feedback that they were getting from users because it's sort of not the screaming part of your work, right? Because you're working on a team, you have colleagues who are all want something from you. The engineers want to have their their features defined. You need like there's just so many different things to do, and the one thing that is not visible to everyone who will sort of like give your review and make sure that you get promoted is how many users you listen to in the product development process. And I think that like lots of folks are essentially ignoring lots and lots of feedback that they're getting from users. And that's sort of I think there's just this giant gap in how much better everything could be if we actually listen to what folks have to say about it.
You know, it's so interesting speaking from like a designer's point of view. Like, I've always found it surprising how how the companies that I've worked at, they constantly talk about how important user research is, but they never did it. And I almost wonder now, looking at how easy your product is to use, if it was a function of not so much like they didn't want to do it, they knew in the back of their mind that it was going to end up on a spreadsheet that no one uses. or reads.
Yeah.
Where did you find yourself in that process, or like addressing that process? And I know we chatted a little before the show about who your main user is, but who is that main user now?
Yeah, great question. So we built this for product teams broadly, but always sort of like with the PM at the back of my mind, being an ex-PM myself, right? And I think that very early on, what we discovered was that we had a lot of different personas, but yes, PM was the number one persona, but a third of our users, roughly a third of our like power users, were designers, and which is kind of a very big subset of our user base. And I think it is precisely for this reason that you mentioned, that part of it is like, obviously designers need to know what users are saying about the product to be able to solve the problem. But also our product really incorporates user feedback into the development process. It's not just, it doesn't stop with the spreadsheet with like giving you, here's the list of feature requests. It gives you the list of feature requests so that you can then click on the ones that you think are interesting and automatically write user stories with all of that underlying feedback and sync that to Jira or Linear. Or you can select your list of insights that you thought were interesting and write the PRD with that, right? So it's sort of that sense of emptiness where we've collected all this user feedback and now it's just sitting there in a spreadsheet. That's what we really tried to solve, to make sure that we complete the cycle. We make sure that it doesn't just end with giving you the insights. We're giving you the tools to make it really quick to turn those insights into the next step. And sometimes that next step is actually more research. We make it really easy for you to take all of those insights and generate a new survey that dives deeper, because you may discover that actually you didn't have enough insights about what you really wanted to focus on. So then you want to go further and kind of and learn more. But I think that's a really interesting insight, that like that you felt like there's this like, it's missing because that no one's going to do anything with it, right?
Well, was there a lot of drift between like what you guys came up with and then where you guys are now? And I have to ask, like, do you guys use your own product?
We do. We do use our own product. We do. We use it all the time, in all kinds of ways, right? Like we use it as intended, and then I kind of use it in some strange ways, which is that we've grown 100% organically, originally via Twitter mostly, and then over time through other sources. But most of our earliest users came to Kraftful from Twitter,
And for
and then
those
we
that
ended
don't
up
know,
getting.
over what period of time?
Yeah, so our most recent product, we've had lots and lots of pivots over time, but that like the most recent product we launched in beta in early 2023. So like that, most of our current user base, signed up starting early 2023. So we're now like halfway through 2024. So it's like a year and a half. So very, very rapid growth.
Serious growth. Yeah.
So in the 100% organic, as I mentioned, as a result, a lot of the feedback, really valuable feedback I get via Twitter DMs. And so I will end up just like copying and pasting that into Kraftful to make sure that all of the feedback ends up in this like repository, because there is an easy way to like copy and paste feedback, as well as connecting all of your sources for Kraftful to be
Okay,
utilized.
this is making me understand your guys' product a little bit differently than even what's on your guys' like website.
Interesting. I'm
Because
interested to hear how. Because we need to
Well,
like
because it's
change
like
our
I think
positioning.
Well, I think that and this is I think what I've seen with a lot of these sort of product feedback tools is that they're really really focused on the integration layer, right? I think that that's like something really important to get right, because there's so many different surfaces that customer feedback can be coming through. But what you just described, The specific part that was like, wait, this is like a very interesting framing is you said wanting to make sure that all of the customer feedback was on Kraftful. And that makes me think of like one way of thinking about this product is almost like, do you know these like personal knowledge management tools like Roam or Obsidian? I don't know if that's quite the space that you guys are coming for, but the idea of you being able to cluster the feedback and make sure that it's all kind of like there and interconnected, the relevant stuff is connected to each other, is really interesting because it's like it goes even beyond a spreadsheet. It's almost like it's a specialized version of like Notion, right? Where it's like Notion, there's like a way that you could produce like a really, really crude rudimentary version of this thing in Notion that would not be able to get the job done as well if like you were very, very demanding of like aggregating customer feedback.
Yeah.
And that goes that goes a little bit further than just like spreadsheet rows. It's almost like a graph.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's like there's this. It's actually kind of it's hard to make sure that all your feedback ends up in one place, because you will have like you'll be like, okay, I'm making sure that all my support ticket feedback is here, and I'm making sure that my all my like app review feedback is here. But then I'm getting all these like customer calls, and then I'm taking notes, and that's like, and then sometimes I will like report that to the team, but sometimes it will like end up nowhere, right? And so like, well, with Kraftful, we make sure that you connect your Google Meet or your Zoom, and every time you've had a customer call, it then like it just magically ends up in Kraftful, gets analyzed alongside all of your survey data and reviews and all of that stuff. So just it is this like sense of how do we make sure that really everything is in one place. So you don't have to be like, okay, now I've looked at all my user feedback in Kraftful. Now I have to go and look at this other place where I have more stuff, right? Like it shouldn't be like that. It should be able to have it all in one place, be able to think about it, because user feedback is just one piece of the puzzle. There's always going to be, right? Like like your future product is going to be shaped by a lot of other things than just the feedback, but we make sure so that like the feedback is there for you, analyzed quickly, doesn't take any time, and then you can do your like ideation on top of that, which is kind of like what everyone really wants to do, right?
So that quickness, obviously it's being served up by AI, but like you and Agree were talking about before this chat, is like you all had already positioned yourself to be a recipient of the AI wave. Can you just take us a little through that and your positioning?
Yeah. So we started Kraftful way before this AI wave. It was a solution for product managers. It was a very different solution. We had a lot of pivots along the way, but somewhere along the way, and it was sort of always focused on the same audience, but with a very, very different solution. But somewhere along the way, I got the chance to play with GPT in like early 2020, and realized, hey, this will solve that problem, the problem I've had when I was sitting there with my glass of wine. I fed it App Store reviews and realized that this would work well, right? Or at least it had promise. And so we ended up developing our first GPT powered feature and launching it in early 2021. And it was at that point, part of our bigger product analytics solution that was helping you figure out what users wanted you to build, but from different angles. And so it's just one feature. And then we started feeling the pull, like people really wanted that one feature. And there was also lots of reasons why we realized that all the other things were really not where we wanted to go. And so we ended up pivoting to this one feature at somewhere in the fall of 2022, before ChatGPT launched. And it was sort of a very lucky pivot, because then ChatGPT launched. We ended up rebuilding our entire product. It shares no code with that one feature that we had in 2021. And we built this like really scrappy MVP that we launched. We built it in 3 months or something. And in being a YC company, we got early access to the ChatGPT API. So we could launch like a couple of weeks before that ChatGPT API launched, and then like GPT-4 launched. And so we got this moment in time where everyone were sort of like thinking about, okay, ChatGPT is there, and I need to start looking for a solution that will work for my like industry. And so we could be there with our solution and be like the ChatGPT for product teams, even though it was like so incredibly early on for our product. But it was really, really helpful and right away, but in that sense.
Wow. So it was kind of like the first wave that you guys were riding. This was one of the questions that I had. You say 50,000 B2B users, product-led growth in 18 months is extraordinary. Sorry, not users, companies, right? So your guys'
It's users
organization
and
table.
companies.
Sure.
It's users
Okay.
Yeah. So it's product led, and so what ends up happening is that it's individual product team members signing up for Kraftful. Usually they will analyze some piece of feedback and then start inviting team members on their own, and then that's how we get into companies. And then for most part, they upgrade on their own through kind of our self-serve experience.
Incredible.
And then sometimes it becomes an enterprise.
That is the dream, right? And the thing that I was going to ask about, though, is when you said that most of the organic growth, especially initially, was coming in through Twitter. I wanted to know about like how it was that you guys were able to get that sort of like chatter, the bonfire of people talking about Kraftful going online, because I know that sort of tech, where conversations are happening in tech right now is Twitter. Was it that you guys were sort of able to ride that wave? Like, did that wave also get you guys on the Twitter map of people are, oh, how do I use ChatGPT for my industry? And you guys are like, hi, product people, like we've got a ChatGPT kind of co-pilot experience for customer feedback.
No, actually, it was more random than that. We so we. I think the one thing that I realized, and the time I realized that was with one particular tweet, but I think I had a bit of a product audience on Twitter, not nearly as big as I have now, but I had it to some extent. And what I realized was that if we got our positioning right, all I needed to do was for primarily product managers at the time, to discover Kraftful. And if they discovered Kraftful and read what we do, they would sign up. And the way I discovered that, and as a result, it meant that all we needed to do was to have tweets that were interesting to product managers, not necessarily have tweets about AI or Kraftful or any of those things. So we didn't, and I didn't at the time. And I discovered this with one particular tweet that went kind of just slightly viral. Not even, I wouldn't even say slightly viral. It got popular. And it was a tweet about non-alcoholic beer. And so people read this tweet, they interacted with this tweet, then they went to my profile, they saw I was at Kraftful, and they went to Kraftful and they signed up.
What was this tweet? Do you ever remember?
About non-alcoholic beer. It was a list of non-alcoholic beers that I like. Truly.
Oh, so it wasn't even like product people. Here's 16 lessons you can learn from non-alcoholic beer. Like, why would anyone do this?
It was not.
These
non-alcoholic beers. Here's my favorite non-alcoholic beers.
That's it.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. That's it. And so I think that my aha moment was that I just need to write things that product folks find engaging and interesting, and I just need to figure out what that thing is. And it doesn't
non-alcoholic
have to be
beer for PMs. Got it.
Yeah, I don't know what the lesson is here.
That's the growth hack. I think B2B SaaS founders, you gotta get your non-alcoholic beer list out and get those early customers in.
You need to stop drinking alcohol.
Yeah. Wait, so okay.
My journey from my glass of wine at it on Friday nights to my non-alcoholic.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. So okay, so you realize you're like, this is weird. I tweeted about something completely unrelated to Kraftful, and that drove Kraftful signups. And at that point, was your game plan from there to use Twitter to build an audience and then use that audience to get people to drive to Kraftful? And if so, was it just sort of like you were trying to maximize what was interesting to the Kraftful ICP, rather like, if you're open to sort of like breaking down how you thought about putting stuff out there that would resonate?
Yeah. I just, like, I think one thing you have to do is you just have to try a lot. And so I tried a lot. I just put out a ton of content. Back then I was putting out, I think, like 3 pieces of content per day, maybe 2 or 3 per day. They were all scheduled. They still are all scheduled, but it's not nearly as like frequent. And then I was measuring to see like what was how what did people engage with and what did they not, and then I tried to do more of the things that resonated with folks and less of the things that didn't and then also like continued experimenting, and then certain things worked really well for a period of time and then they stopped working, and then I had to come up with new things. I think in the early days, one thing that worked really well was to ask questions like, product folks, what are you reading? That may have been like one of the more popular ones. And then everyone were kind of sharing what their different, like what books, product books or podcasts or whatever they were listening to. And so that became a really big thing. And then I started doing summary posts of those. So I would like do one of those like, product folks, what are you reading? And then I would use ChatGPT to summarize that whole thing and then post the like, here's the top product books that were shared by like 200 product people. And so it's sort of like, I don't know, I was sort of snowballed from there. But it was a lot of experimentation, just trying different things, seeing what sticks. I think to some extent also being that persona, so I could kind of look at a tweet and be like, this is interesting, this is not, right? To some extent, I think that was helpful. But yeah, lots and lots of just doing, doing a lot of things. Like it's sort of like how can you be lucky? It's if you try.
Try a lot. When you found that like that growth was kind of slowing down, how did you shift gears into another like growth channel?
I think I didn't necessarily shift into another channel per se. I just tried the same channel. I guess I did. I mean, I tried Threads at points. I tried LinkedIn. Neither of them really have taken off the same way Twitter. And I think as we're monitoring the traffic, it seems like most of the traffic still leads back to Twitter, even though we will have spikes around getting featured in like product newsletters or like product podcasts, and then but those still would have technically originated on Twitter because that's where folks would have discovered us. So I think that kind of when I think about it, that just seems like a channel I should continue nurturing, even if every now and again we slow down there because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to ask about too then is like on the tail side, or like on the further down funnel, let's say, just thinking about this entire thing like a product team would be dissecting this whole journey that starts with like they find Kraftful or Kraftful's founder through a tweet. They click through to the website link. They're now signing up. What did you guys learn about how to optimize time to value? Because I know that with product-led growth, that's like so important, right? Making sure that if they don't need to book a demo with you, that they can figure out the aha moment on their own, And you guys have like all these different sources that you can be aggregating customer feedback from. Like, what did you guys realize was the aha moment that you needed to speed run the customer to?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's always been like kind of my number one focus, other than figuring out how to fill the top of funnel, has been how do I get the users to quickly see like an insight list as quickly as possible. And so there's certain sources that we know are easier to get feedback from, and so we guide them towards those sources. But it's really just anything in the product experience. Like I was sort of like looking at things like, email confirmation steps, and really anything that adds friction. I would be kind of analyzing the onboarding funnel and making sure that there isn't anything that prevents the user from getting from my tweets to insights as quickly as possible. And that sort of, and we still talk about that. Like, today's Monday, we were in sprint planning where one of the priorities I listed was to go through the onboarding experience again and see, is there anything else we can do to make that process even more seamless, even now, right? And sort of like we've already done a ton and we still think about it all the time. How can we make it even simpler?
Where do you find that like most of your customers during that onboarding process are actually having that aha moment? Like what's like the first artifact that Kraftful plays in that onboarding experience?
It's a list of feature requests, right? Like, it's sort of like, if you get to a list of feature requests, you're sort of like,
You're
okay,
hooked.
yeah, you're hooked. You're like, this is it, right? And I think there's a lot of like, there's just lots and lots of similar types of products out there, but they usually give you like themes or, and you have to do lots of things. You have to do some labeling and like all kinds of things, or even just get on a demo call with someone, which people hate. Um, and I think that just getting them, instead of doing any of those things, just getting them a list of feature requests, and even if those are not like the feature requests you want to act on, just knowing, okay, these are my top feature requests from this one source. Let me go and get it from all the other sources and then try to figure out what I want to build, right? I think that's really powerful.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting. So, I mean, other tools in this space, they think about it in terms of themes, but this is like a very specific artifact that you guys are trying to deliver. Is that the aha moment for your typical customer coming in is going to be that feature request. Was that at all like shaped or influenced by this insight that you guys had that a third of your power users are designers?
Um, not per se. I think designers and product managers are really, and engineers. Everyone's interested in feature requests. Um, the 1/3 of our user base being designers is sort of like that. That was interesting in its own right, because we'd always assumed that our users would be product managers. And then we, like, at some point, once we started getting some critical mass and Kraftful audited our user base and discovered that, oh hey, there's a lot of designers using Kraftful, and sort of started thinking about, like, why is that? And we, like, later on, when we really started thinking about it, was we got listed by Fast Company as one of the most innovative companies in design, on the design list, right? And then again, we're sort of like, it was in our face that this was really important for designers. We're like, huh. And I think that the things that I think made that happen is that, first of all, everyone else in our, like, all of our competitors specifically focus on other personas, expressly not designers. I think there's something about just the name Kraftful, like craft is a big thing for designers. So I think just like having a brand that speaks to craft is valuable, even though we absolutely didn't plan for that. And then just like having a user experience that is specifically focused on like kind of focusing on user experience. The fact that we're really sweating the details around, is there anywhere that you can fall out of the funnel, right? Like, just thinking through, is there anything that makes it difficult to use in the very first user experience? I think there's a lot of specifically around AI tools, because people are building them so quickly, and we're definitely also doing that. But that, I think, can be offensive to designers when you sort of get into a user experience and it's sort of like just not, it's clunky and hard to use, and I don't know, that you're sort of like, I'm supposed to use this to make my product better, but this product is no good. Like, it's just like, doesn't feel good, right? So I think just having thought about that first user experience, it actually is beneficial to getting a design audience because then, like comparatively to other things out there, it is more appealing. I don't know. I have lots and lots of theories, but those are kind of.
It's fascinating, and his like the fact that, so if 1/3 of your power users are designers, among the other personas, I imagine, are product managers on there as well.
Yes, product managers are still the top persona, and then it's designers, UX researchers, engineers, founders, customer success teams, and the thing is that it's also a lot of different people because someone will come to Kraftful, and that's usually a product manager or a designer or a UX researcher, and then they will invite a bunch of team members. So then we will end up with kind of a broader set of folks on Kraftful, even though that's, well, I guess it is a product team, right?
Right.
They've constructed their product team on Kraftful.
Yeah.
Da Vinci
So,
always said,
go ahead.
oh,
Sorry, go ahead,
I
Harris.
was going to say, like, Da Vinci always said, like, get rid of the thing that you love most. And the idea was, I'm just like reading his journal right now, and the idea was to make room for the things that love you the most. And so, was it kind of hard? It would be hard for me to make a tool that I think is for one audience and then discover that it's actually for designers. Like did you kind of like tell us about that moment when you're like, wow, should we start readjusting not just for PMs but for designers, and also like what are the implications of that, or is the path that we're on just naturally aligned with how designers go about their, yeah, can you just take us through that a little?
Yeah, I think that I think it is naturally aligned because they are already finding it. We did think about, is there something we should think about from like a positioning perspective, um, and and in terms of just like branding, we're still on that journey. So I don't think, you're not seeing the end product of that, but we are definitely thinking about how do we make it more appealing to designers, given that it already is. But how do we do it purposefully? And then I think actually it was more for me. It was almost like eye opening, that I've always considered myself a product manager because that's the role I've had, but I've always designed in most roles that I've had. And so to me, it was more like maybe an eye opening that maybe I am more of a product designer than I like let myself think. And I designed Kraftful. I don't design it anymore. We now have a designer, but I designed the first version that we launched back in 2023. I designed all of Kraftful up until that point, the different products that we've had. I did design in my prior roles as a product manager, and most of my PM roles, I designed some part of the product. And if I designed search, I think that may still be the search that IFT uses. So I think that was sort of an interesting that maybe, yes, I've been designing for, maybe I've designed this experience for the PM that I was, which was not exactly like squarely a PM, or something, It was sort
It
of
turns
a,
out there's 50,000 more of you.
yes, that's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. So it wasn't so hard, I guess. It was more interesting than hard.
And I was also going to ask, like, then if you've got all these like power users, do you have a philosophy on what direction to evolve your product in the face of so many different power user personas?
Hmm. That's tough, right? Because I think that pretty much everyone who's using Kraftful today is a power use, like they're a AI power user. Like it's gonna be hopefully gonna be millions of people one day. But for now, it is all the people who want to build with AI. They're like the AI early adopters, right? And so I think they're not that different in persona right now. That there are some some that it's sort of it's interesting because it's not just tech companies. It is very widespread. It's like it's you know like fast food restaurants and like chains companies. It's
Wow.
car manufacturers. It's like global retail brands, but they all have some sort of product teams that are building like their app or their website, and sometimes they're collecting feedback about physical products too. But I think that despite that widespread like penetration in terms of like the type of companies, it is like all the tech companies too, of course, but it's beyond that. But I think despite that, it is the individuals at those companies that are AI, like early adopters of AI. And so I think over time we will have to rethink how we're doing our product so that it becomes easier and easier to use, because I think the folks who are seeking out AI solutions today, they can probably use many more tools than the folks who aren't. If that
So
makes
there's
sense.
probably a lot of like, UX fundamentalists that would, or UX research fundamentalists that would listen to this chat and kind of wonder like, where does this like, there's observability and then there's synthesis in UX research. You guys are much more on the synthesis where it's taking that raw data, whereas like a lot of fundamentalists, they very much subscribe to observability. Is Kraftful kind of like leaning into that or exploring going into that? Or do you have a stance of like, no, observability has no place, it's all about synthesis? Like, take us through where you are or where you're going.
Yeah. So we're not building a solution for product research. We're building a solution for product building. Um, and the core to building is knowing what users want. And so we want to make it really easy for you to collect all the feedback you have um, and collect more feedback than you have with surveys and AI interviews. But we don't want to reinvent the use or even design for the like. Yes, we don't want to do observability. To answer your question more directly than that, we what we want to do is to make it really easy for you to build products, right? And one piece of that is to collect data to build it with, but that's not solely the kind of our focus. We are focusing on that whole journey, and so I think that if we end up focusing too much on research, we won't be able to do that journey well. And maybe at some point we can kind of double down on parts of that journey. But I think what I first want to do is to make sure that we help teams be able to do that end to end before we
Yeah.
start diving into any aspects of any deeper aspects of research.
Yeah, it just made me think of like I was just researching to double check that it was Henry Ford, but Henry Ford said, "Yeah, never listen to your users. If you did, they would just ask for a faster horse."
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And that's, and I think that's right, right? Like users are going to ask for a faster horse. Like people when they're looking at Kraftful, they're asking me like for like based on what they're already seeing from Kraftful, they're asking for like some sort of slight modification of Kraftful. Whereas I know that like with better models, I'll be able to deliver something very, very different. And so I'm listening to that feedback and I'm trying to like respond to that feedback, like address that feedback with some improvements while not investing too much into that. If I know that like with this better model, we're actually going to be able to solve that problem in a much better like underlying way, right? So and that's true for everyone. That's just like an example from Kraftful specifically, but
Yeah.
that's true for every product, right? Like you probably have something where you know that, oh, my technology, I'll be able to serve this problem in a much better way. I'll be able to build that car that no one's asking me about. And so I know that's true for us, and so it's true for all of our customers. We need to be able to like enable them to do that, right? So we can't just get them too hung up in building faster horses. Then
Yeah,
they're not going to be successful. Yeah.
Totally.
they may want
Totally.
a car.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They don't even know it yet. Well, so in closing this out, Yana, we'd love to hear what has been the most surprising thing that you have discovered about Kraftful's users in the last year and a half.
Other than the fact that so many of them are designers.
Yeah.
um, um, yeah, I think it's probably been the evolution of the feedback we've been getting from users. Very early on, a lot of the feedback that I was getting from users, just getting on calls with them, was around, will you like, do you plan on building my, like, I've used these other user feedback analysis tools that use these like old school ML techniques. How do you plan on rebuilding that within Kraftful? And I guess like I haven't been so direct with them as to say that we're absolutely not building that, but we were absolutely not building that, right?
Well, you heard it here first for anyone that's asking.
Yes, that's right. That's right. But I will say, so the thing that was surprising to me was that now, 1.5 years later, I don't get these requests anymore. Now I get requests around improving Kraftful, and pain points around Kraftful and how to make it better. So I think there's like, it's been really interesting to see, because at some point I actually thought that, oh no, they will continue asking me for this stuff forever. That was
It's
not true.
interesting. It's interesting, right? Because like if one were using Kraftful and those DMs through your Twitter came through, wouldn't Kraftful tell you to go down that path? And so I guess
Yes,
the question would be is like, where does human intervention bridge the gap between where Kraftful synthesizes and a human designs or a human PMs?
I think it's empathy, right? It's empathizing with the user and trying to understand, they're asking for this. Why are they asking for this? Well, our users are asking for this because they've only ever used these like old school tools. They haven't used Kraftful
Hmm.
enough to understand, and we haven't built enough of Kraftful for them to really see where we're going. And so like, I'm gonna like, if I can empathize with them and understand where that's coming from, I can make a judgment call on whether we should be addressing that. We're actually trying to build a thing that will help like help help them better ultimately.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Yana, thank you so much for your time. It was an incredibly insightful conversation about aggregating and synthesizing user feedback.
Thank you. I really, really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.